Hey everyone, it's Stefanie Garcia, and this is the Art of Becoming series, where we talk all about the journey between where you are right now and where you want to be, and all the stuff that has to happen in between to get you there. If you're ready, let's get started. Hey everyone, so today's episode is going to be an interview. I've been interviewing so many incredible women, and they have been just so gracious with sharing their stories with me about their journeys, both professionally and personally. They've just been so rich and so full of wisdom that I just felt like I need to share them with all of you here. So today's episode is going to be from Emily. She owns the Jade Feather, and it's a plant shop. And what I love about this interview is just how honest and vulnerable she is about the things that she has moved through and the things that she's still moving through. Why I love it so much is because I feel that in this modern age of business, we can think that somehow if what we're doing doesn't look like what other people are doing, that somehow we're a failure. If we compare ourselves in our journey where we're at with where other people are, either in their business, in their career, or in their personal lives. And we can walk away from that feeling like there's something wrong with us if we're not having the easiest time in our journey. If we're thinking that, we can end up thinking that when we're being human and having a very human experience with our businesses, our careers, and our personal lives, and when looking at other people, we can think that, somehow they don't have to deal with the same things that we're dealing with. They don't have the same issues. They're not working through the same thing. Something's wrong with us because we're doing it, right? Somehow they've got the magic sauce, they've got the magic solution to never have to deal with that stuff. They don't have to deal with those things. We do, and somehow we think we're a failure. There's something wrong with us. What I love about this interview with Emily is how open we are about the process, the journey of creating a business, of transitioning your career, of building a business while you're still working in another job, and all the fears and things that we have to work through in order to grow our business or our career. I just really love just how honest, kind of step by step that this interview was. I don't think we talk enough about the mess sometimes that comes with owning a business. I don't think we talk enough about how owning a business, or even transitioning careers, is a journey of itself. And so, again, I felt that this interview was so valuable that I really wanted to share with all of you, because again, on this podcast, I talk about the journey of getting from where you are to where you want to be and all the steps that have to happen in between to get you there. And this interview really expressed that really, really well. So anyway, without further ado, here's your interview.
Here. Okay. So let's just get started with you telling everybody who you are and what you do.
So my name is Emily. I am the person behind the Jade Feather. I own a plant shop in Madison. It started out as kind of an incubated business within crafted coffee. So I put the plants in the coffee shop, crafted coffee, and they sell them there for me as well. I still have the plants there. And then I expanded in May of 2022. I expanded into my own space where I sell plants that are already potted up in nice ceramic or concrete pots. And I do have some additional like tools and accessories for taking care of plants, planty gift things, just really things that a plant lover might enjoy.
So tell me where this love for doing this came from.
Well, I grew up in a home, like my mom always had plants in the home, and I really didn't pay much attention to them. I didn't really develop a passion for plants like I have now until about 5 years ago. And it was more a curiosity. I got an orchid from the grocery store, and it was just a more of a curiosity, like, how do I keep this thing alive? I watched tons of YouTube videos on different ways to grow them and make them rebloom and that sort of thing. So it started out more like science experiments than it did really like decoration or anything like that. And once I got the hang of that and really was successful with it for about, I would say about a year, I really focused on orchids. And then it started expanding into other things as I got a little bit bored with just a house full of orchids. I started expanding into other plants, and it just grew from there to the point where I couldn't get plants when I wanted them. So I just decided, all right, if nobody else is going to have them, then I will, and I will just make my own shop. So that's kind of where I started and how it developed into what it is.
So did you have the idea to build it into a business, or was it something that just kind of grew into a business and you had people come to you saying, I really want your plants?
It was intentionally a business from the point. Yeah, I really started it out as a business. I remember the day I was having a plant craving, and I went to like Clarksville, New Albany, like there wasn't anything around here. So I went there, and there wasn't even anything there. So I was like, I just need to take this into my own hands and make this a business where like I can buy plants and offer them to other people who are probably feeling the same way that I am.
Hmm.
And mind you, this was during 2020 is when I opened my business. So COVID was in full swing. People were like really getting into plants too. So I knew there was other people out there like me.
You knew that you were not the only one.
I knew I was not the only one. And yes.
So tell me about your journey into business, from it being a passion into now making it to a business. What was that transition like for you?
I really had to overcome fear. Because growing up, like when I was a teenager, my parents opened a restaurant, and that's a tough business to succeed in. And a lot of restaurants start up and fail within the first few years, and theirs did. So I saw them put everything that they had into this business, and then it didn't succeed. And so there was just like this huge fear that I was going to fail at doing this. And so I really had to like work through that fear. And so it was a lot more emotional work than it was like anything else. And the fear still creeps back in, but once I got myself to where I could like confront that fear and move past it, and long enough to like get my business license and open a bank account and all of that stuff, then I could get moving with it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Can we talk a little bit more about the fear that you felt specifically when it came to seeing your parents failing in their business? Where did you equate that to your business?
I don't even really know. It's not the same kind of business. I really like, I mean, they used our home as collateral. I mean, maybe they didn't. I don't know. I just had this like all or nothing belief that like if my business fails, then everything else in my life is going to crumble, you know? And so once I was able to just let go of that and realize that it's not all or nothing, like obviously I found a way to make this work. Like I didn't have to quit my other job, and I still have that income, and like it allowed me to let go of the fear. And if this doesn't work out, I'm not really out a whole lot,
Mm.
so I don't have to worry about my business making my house payment, or feeding my family or anything like that. I was able to like think outside of what my experience was as a kid and like do it differently.
So you're able to rewrite the story. So
Yes.
before you were seeing it from the perspective of a child, and now you're able to come back at it from the perspective of an adult and see it with more light. And
Yeah, and realize that the fear wasn't serving me, really holding me back.
Oh yeah, I love when you say that, because I think our first instinct is to go to fear and worry, and that makes sense. Our brains are trying to keep us safe.
Mhm.
But when you can step back and go that the fear and the worry aren't doing anything for you, because you're not really being protected necessarily from, what are you protecting yourself from? Is that really a danger? I think it's pretty interesting. When was the moment that you felt like you moved through that fear?
That's a really interesting question. And I didn't really realize what that moment was until I was going back through a journal, because one of the things that I do to process things is journal. And I had, so in a book that I had read once, there's this like, I don't know, mantra. I don't know what you would call it, but it's, I bless you with love and I release you and I let you go. Louise Hay is the author. I can't remember the name of the book, but I used that, and I just wrote a letter to fear, and I was like, to the fear that's holding me back, to the fear that's keeping me small, I bless you with love and I release you and I let you go. And I know where you came from and I know what you're trying to do, but I don't need you anymore. And so when I had totally forgotten that I had done that, and then when I went back, like that was like within a week, I had my business license after writing that, and I didn't
Wow.
really connect it. Yeah. So it was just kind of like there was a breakthrough that happened that like freed up space for that movement to take place.
Wow. So what was the time frame between that journal entry and then that moment? So you wrote it in the journal, and then how much time passed before you reread it and then were able to release it?
So the journal entry was probably late July of 2020. Within a week to 10 days, August 3rd of 2020 is when I had my business license. It was like one day I just was like, I'm going to do it. And once it's got set in motion, it just sort of happened on its own. Like I know that I was going through the motions of doing it, but there wasn't a whole lot of effort or thought put into it. It just like I was just doing it and not worrying about doing it. I wasn't using up all of my energy worrying about it. I was just doing it. And then by September, like I had a Facebook page created, and by October, I had plants in crafted coffee. So it was all pretty quick once it got rolling.
Isn't that something where we put so much energy into our fears and our doubts, and we put so much into that rather than what we're trying to create, we're
Yes.
investing in the fear and the worry and the doubt. And when you stop letting it hold you back
Mm-hmm.
and release that energy that you're putting into that, it's almost like it turns and you flow in a different direction. Is that what you felt?
Flow is the perfect word, because seriously, anytime I have tried to force something to happen with my business, it has not worked. But the Craftons came to me and asked me if I would put plants in their coffee shop that they had just bought GH coffee, which is now crafted coffee. So like opportunities came to me. The shop in the trolley barn, that opportunity through a series of events came to me. I wasn't hunting it down. I wasn't beating this, idea of what I wanted into submission. Doors just opened. So
do you feel like the doors opened from that moment of that journal entry?
absolutely. And there have been times when I've recognized, okay, I'm letting fear creep back in and I need to re-release it. Like, it hasn't been a one-time thing. It's been when I see it again, when I recognize it, oh, there's that feeling again, or oh, there's that thought again. That's fear. I have re-released it.
Oh, see, that's so important. So I think in our minds, we like to think that fear is this big thing, that if we could just overcome it, all of it's going to clear out for us and everything's going to work out. But I don't think enough people talk about the fact that fear can come back in several times and every different level in different places that you don't even think about, that this is a process and this is a journey. And that's what I love about these kind of conversations, as we're not sitting in that illusion of a one and done. It's a journey. And I think it also sounds like there was a moment you wrote that in that journal, but then you talked about how, I think it was July 10th when you wrote it, between that and August 3rd. So you released the fear in your journal, but there was a space here between that date and it actually you getting the business license. So can you talk about what happened in between? Because I think, again, the thought can be, okay, when I do this releasing, it's just going to magically all come together. But there was a process that happened afterwards.
I think that I don't know what happened in that time, other than, there were moments of inspiration. There were moments of like where energy sort of welled up, but then one day I was just like, I'm doing it. And over my lunch break, I had to, probably during that time, I don't remember specifically, but I had to also learn about like what the process is, so there was a little bit of like learning and exploring. But the day that I got my business license, literally, I was just like on my lunch break and I'm like, I'm doing it. And I did it.
So it sounds like, whereas before it would have been an uphill battle to push yourself towards getting that business license, when that process of releasing and then allowing the process to happen afterwards, the unfolding of what happened afterwards, that's where you're talking about that flow came in and took over. It wasn't a force energy, it was a flowing energy.
It wasn't allowing, it was
allowing. Beautiful. Here's something else I want to come back to. Also, a lot of the time I see, and I've had this experience with my own self in my own business, is we think, okay, I open a business. Now the clients are magically going to come. I'm going to make all the money I want to make. Now I'm the professional. And sometimes a journey is not as clear cut like that. And sometimes you have to go from having a job that covers your expenses while you're creating and cultivating this other piece of work. So this one piece of work is your body of work. Let's say for you, you're working with plants. That's what you want to do. You're passionate about it. Your life force energy is moving through that. You're the channel for that. However, at the same time, you live in a world that needs currency for your expenses. And so you have a job to do that. Can you talk about balancing both of those?
I can. I really have to. So my job that I do for my income is I'm a therapist. I'm a clinical manager at a mental health facility. And so I think that might have also like helped prepare me for this, because I talk to people a lot about boundaries. I talk to people a lot about balance. I talk to people a lot about fear, and just now in a space in my own life where I can take my own advice. um, so starting to listen to what I'm telling other people and apply it in my own life. But I do have to set boundaries around my Monday through Thursday job and not let it consume all of my energy. And I have to do the same to a certain degree with my business, although that's where I would rather, if I'm going to if I'm going to put extra into something, that's where I would rather do it right now, because I know that it's still growing. I feel in my other job, I'm kind of where I've worked for years to get where I am, and I'm kind of where I want to be with that. And now my excess energy I want to put into my business and grow that, because that's really where I see, like, this is a tortoise, not a hare. This is like slow and steady wins the race. This is like where I'm going to be as I approach retirement versus, just something fun that I'm doing right now.
That's interesting. That's wow. That's beautiful. So what I'm also hearing is that you're not seeing it. This is something else that I've seen when I've talked to people, is there's a shame and this hiding around having another job versus your business, and the need to want to appear like you're perfect and you've got this business and it's flowing and it's making the money and you're the professional. And then there's this hiding of this other part of you, of needing that, or choosing. I'll say needing, because people will say needing, but it's more about choosing to have a side job. So it doesn't sound like you have any shame in that, or
And
need to hide.
absolutely not. Like, I'm proud of the career that I've built as a therapist, and also, like, the company that I work for has been really supportive. Like, I had to adjust my work schedule to be able to open like a brick and mortar business. And so I went to them, and they were really supportive of that and helped by giving me the flexibility I needed to do the other business with plants that are, like, I'm really passionate about that. So they're supportive of that as well. So, and I really like to, like, my office at work is full of plants, and my shop has little touches of like self-care books and stuff like that in it as well. So, like, there's a little bit of a merger between the two, or a hints of one in the other.
Oh, that's really great. This is what I love also about these kind of conversations, is getting the chance to talk to people at different levels, at different stages in their business. People who are full into their businesses, people who are just starting out, people who are in the middle, because it needs to be a conversation I feel that we all have. Instead of having shame of what we think it needs to look like or it needs to be like, let's talk about how it really is. Let's talk about the journey, that becoming, the creation of what you're doing. And what I love that you talked about is that you see it as this transition and there's intertwining, but there's no need for it to compete. One sits in the other. They go back and forth. And it sounds like both are an expression of you. However, you're leaning more towards one type of expression over another.
Yeah, I see that my business is my future. Like, my job, my career that I've built as a therapist has helped me grow into who I am now, and has helped me become confident enough to be able to move forward into making a business, making out of my passion, which is plants.
So let's talk about the journey to get here. Let's go back to your childhood. Because I always love to ask that in these interviews. When you look back at your childhood, can you see where there are hints of what you're doing now, where that was kind of start showing up?
So I do remember this, but my mom reminds me that, like, my science experiments as a kid were always like propagating plants and things like that, like the curiosity of how plants work. And so there's that. And, like, I never had, like, kept my own plants or took care of my own plants. I hated gardening. It was a, like, total drudgery to have to go out and weed the garden. But, like, my mom was planting the seeds as when I was a kid, because she had a house full of plants, and she, so it's always been there. But Yeah. And there was a time, even as an adult, like when my kids were young and I had to put all of my energy into raising babies, that if a plant couldn't keep itself alive, it probably shouldn't be in my house.
You're like, well, if you can't fend for yourself, sorry, because I don't have it.
Where my children live, you're going to have to fend for yourself. So, I had plants, but they were, a lot of them, well, they all died. I don't have any of the plants I had when my kids were little. So I think it's okay to tell people that that's okay too. I still I get tired of plants, or plants die on me still. And I just don't get too wrapped up in it. Like, they bring me joy, and when it's time for them to go, it's time for them to go.
Mm-hmm. That's very good perspective. That's really interesting. You're not really tied or connected too much to it. I think it's interesting that you said that you hated gardening and you really weren't into the plants, because I had just done an interview with another gal who absolutely hated sewing and
Really?
never could see herself sewing. And actually her business and her full expression is creating costumes where she has
Wow.
to do a lot of sewing. And so she had grown up absolutely hating it, and now it becomes a thing that's a part of it. So I think it's fascinating that our lives show us what we're meant to do, but we're not always in alignment with it, or it might be completely counter to what we think that we grow up doing.
Like, the readiness, I wasn't in a place of readiness for this until, as a child, I didn't want it felt like a responsibility I didn't want. And as a young parent, I had to prioritize other responsibilities. So I wasn't ready for it until recently.
Oh, wow. Wow. That readiness. I love that when you said that, the readiness to take it on. So it made your potential was always there, but you weren't ready.
And even with the whole fear thing, I wasn't ready to let go of that until I was ready. And when I was ready, it just happened.
See, and I think that's really interesting you say that, because I think we get caught up in wanting to force this change. We're wanting to make something happen and push it, right? If I could just get past this fear, if I could just get past these things, then I can make this happen. And yet you can't, you're not ready sooner than you're ready,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is
Yeah.
amazing. So you felt, now you've been a therapist for a while. What led you to the therapy?
That was a really organic thing. Like, in college, I didn't, in my undergraduate, I didn't really know that this is where I would be. I sort of just landed in a job, a bachelor's level job in a mental health center. Like, I applied for it. I thought, that sounds kind of interesting. I didn't even really know what it was that I was going to be doing. And once I got there, I met really interesting people, and formed these relationships with people who ended up being mentors and models and inspiration for me. And I just, that's how I decided that I wanted to move forward in that career. And the company I work for is really supportive of growing their people from within. So while I was working there, I went to school and got my master's degree, and they were flexible with that. So um, I sort of grew up in the company that I work for. And not that it wasn't intentional, but it wasn't ever planned. It just I grew into this too.
Using the garden, the plant puns. I was going to ask you if you felt like this has grown you, but I didn't want to use a plant pun. We're going to use them. We're just going to go there. We're just going to go there. So this has been an organic growth. Do you feel like if you were not a therapist, that it would have led you to plants still?
That's really hard to say, because I think that a lot of my personal growth came through my career. I learn about myself by helping other people too. So maybe not, maybe it would have come in it through a different way. I mean, I suppose, I really believe that we can get from point A to point B through different paths, so I could have still ended up here just from a different route.
Hmm. So what I really love, let's go back to the fact that you say that you could also be yourself in this other job.
Mhm.
What I see a lot is a lot of hiding from one. So it's either people are hiding, they have a business and they're hiding that they have another job, or they have this other job and they're hiding their true interests of creating a business or doing something different. Was it always just intentional that you brought plants in? You said you have a bunch of plants as a therapist in your office, and then in your office, in your business, you have a bunch of self-help. Being yourself in both sides, do you feel like that was easy and organic, or did you feel like you kind of had to walk into expressing who you truly were on both sides?
I feel like I've never had to hide it. I've never thought about having to hide it. So that wasn't necessarily a consideration. Like through my career, there's always been opportunities to bring nature into it. Like, we've done groups where we go out into nature and, practice mindfulness or things like that. Or we had a group that we grew a garden, and so like that's always been an option to incorporate that into my career as a therapist. So I never really thought about having to hide that because there was opportunities to use nature in that work. With my shop, I've never thought about really hiding it either because I don't know. I just never thought about it.
You never had that hang up.
No, not really. The only, like, if we're gonna talk about hiding, I don't know if this fits in, but like I think one of the biggest pieces of fear that I still carry is showing myself in my business, like through social media, or like people have said to me, people when people are buying you, they're buying you and the expression of you that is your business. They're not buying a product, they're buying you. And that's been really hard for me to, like, in my social media, make myself a part of that because it feels really exposed, and I don't know. So if there's any piece of it that is like hiding, it's there. It's like I don't quite feel comfortable putting myself out there for everybody to see just yet.
That's interesting, because I was going to ask you if you feel like being a therapist and having this business is an expression of you. I was going to ask that question. Do you feel like both of these are a natural expression of you?
Absolutely. Yes. But something about social media and like putting like my picture out there for everybody to see, and like I don't know, it feels a little bit intimidating and awkward. And also the one piece that I guess is a little bit awkward to cross over between the two careers is like when my clients come in and they're like, oh my gosh, you have a shop, I'm going to come shop at your shop. And I'm like a little bit uncomfortable with that because of like the ethical considerations of people coming in and like potentially, outing themselves, and like they can say that they're my client, but it's weird because I'm not supposed to, there's all these HIPAA rules and things like that. So it puts me in a weird ethical position. You know what I'm saying? So
Mhm.
like that crossover where, there's not supposed to be an exchange of money and resources between clients and therapists and things like that. So it's a tricky dance to navigate between the two.
Mhm. So are you feeling yourself some resistance from really expressing that this is what you're wanting to do because of that?
I did have kind of maybe a little bit. I did have like clients discover my Facebook or just, and they're like, I know her, and then it, it's easier if I don't put myself completely out there with my picture,
Mm,
that maybe they won't notice, you know.
yeah, but at the same time, your business doesn't grow.
Exactly. So it's
Mm,
a tricky spot to be in.
mm,
Part of
mm.
bit of just self-consciousness, and part of it is like, how would I handle that in the best, most ethical way? You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know.
Mhm. So what are you doing? And I bring this conversation up here. I ask these questions because there's always going to be something in our business that we're going to use as a crutch to hold us back from our growth and our expression. And then it's always easier to say, well, this is the problem. I don't know how to move past it. And yet we're not actually taking the time to figure out, how could we pass it? Who could we talk to figure out how to move to, where can I get more information? We're not necessarily going in that direction to solve it, because it's nice to hold on to the thing to keep us safe. So you were able to release fear in order to open the business, But it sounds like you've got a little bit of fear when it comes to growing the business. So how are you navigating through this one here? Do you feel like you can see you're holding on to the resistance? Or do you see, like, you think, okay, is this something that you're ready to let go of? I guess you were able to let go of the fear then. Do you feel like you're moving through the fear now and you're ready to let go? Or do you think it's going to take a little bit more time?
So I think that it's going to take a little bit more time, because that's not the only fear I think that's holding me back. Like, I could, that's probably that what I just described is probably the easier of the two or more fears, but like, it's workable. It's fine. I'm doing things like this interview with you that, just dipping my toe into putting myself out there more. Um, but like, the big fear for me is, at some point, okay, there's 24 hours in a day, there's 7 days in a week, there's X amount of my time and energy resources, and I'm maxed out. I'm doing 7 days a week. And so at some point, if I want to grow my business, I'm going to have to let go of some of the stuff I'm doing at work, and let go of, like the, hours, or, you know, take a risk and go out on a limb and let go of some of the income that feels safe and stable, to be able to expand what I'm doing with my business. And that's where I'm not quite ready yet, because I think that hits really close to the original fear of like, failure is a catastrophe, because I won't be able to afford what, the lifestyle that I've got, or whatever.
So it's interesting. It sounds like you have the same fear as before, but it's presenting itself in a different way. I love this interview because, again, this is not the stuff that people talk about. I think when it's so easy to be on social media with the perfect image, pretending you've got it all together, but not wanting to talk about the real stuff that's going on, because
Mhm.
many of us, I think, we are afraid that if we talk about that, that's going to make us look unprofessional, or it's going to make us look like less of a business owner. And we're afraid maybe that won't bring us clients. But I think it's the vulnerability, that humanness, that connects people to your brand, right? To who you are. So you're not just another person selling a plant. You're Emily, or with your business, right? So I want to say kudos to you first, because not only are you doing this interview, you're also doing this interview in a very vulnerable way. So that's a big step forward, right?
Kind of is. It kind of feels like what I do every day in therapy, though. I expect people to be vulnerable, or,
Mm,
like, the only way we move through this is if you feel like you can be vulnerable and talk about these hard things.
yeah. You know, I've also seen with people that the fear of putting themselves out there on social media sometimes come from the fact of thinking that we have to do social media and marketing a certain way, the way we see everybody else doing it.
Mhm.
Instead of realizing that we could do social media and marketing whatever way works for us, that is still in the same expression as everything else that we've been doing. Do you feel like that might be a little bit of like, do you feel as you're putting yourself out there more and more, you're learning that you can actually do it that way?
I feel like I don't know enough about social media to do it any other way than what I've been doing. Like, social media is in my personal life. I don't really use social media. So that has been really a big challenge for me to be consistent with social media, to know what to post on social media. Like, I see other business owners, like there's one in particular who just like, she probably markets herself more than she does the products in her store. And that, like, I get it. That makes me like her and her store more than if she were just posting pictures of the newest products she has in. And I really admire that, but I don't know how to do that necessarily. Like, she's a very unique and dynamic person. And I don't feel like I have that, like, wow factor that she has.
Mm. Yeah, well, but you're not the same person.
Absolutely.
You're not the same person. So it just sounds like you are on your way to discovering your version of it.
I
You
would
know,
love.
yeah, you're on your way to figuring out. And I think that that's a really great point. Another great thing about this conversation is we all have to go to that journey.
Mhm.
We all have to go on the journey of figuring out our version. None of us were born with a manual on how to create a business that our way.
Mhm.
And we're living in a time where we have to discover that for ourselves. It isn't that a blessed thing,
Absolutely.
right? And that's, again, a part of the journey. It's what's growing you, right?
Yes, definitely growing me for sure.
In what ways do you feel like this business has asked you to stretch further than the comfort zone of the current career you have?
I think that this business that's everything that it is. Like, it started at, like, it's the seed of it is my passion for plants, my obsession with plants, but it's been more about the journey of growing and stretching and, like, finding my way outside of my comfort zone. um, and there's been seeds of that planted for a long time. Like, I have a friend who like, we were having a conversation. It wasn't even about this business. It was years before the business idea came. And I don't remember what we were talking about, but she was like, why don't you just stop being so vanilla and really be you? Like, you are so much more than this persona that you put out there of, like, it's vanilla, and that's not you. And so I think conversations like that were seeds for me, for this, and for me in this process. um, I mean, there was just so many. It was not just, I think, like, looking back on it, it wasn't just a one-time decision. It was like lots of different seeds were planted.
I love the analogy. So like you said, with seeds and growth, and like we're just gonna go there. But it's perfect. Honestly, it's perfect. Um, I think you say it so eloquently. I think what's beautiful about what you're talking about is you're talking about the journey of growing and creating this business. And it's growing you as you're growing these plants, as you're taking care of them. And I think that's the story that I'm so glad that I get to tell through this interview, is your story of how plants are affecting your life and how as they grow and you're nurturing them, so are you growing and nurturing your dreams. And that's what we all do, right? Or we can let them die on the vine. We can not nurture them. We can let them sit there and they can die off. And sometimes we have ideas that just die off. Just like you were saying, you're like, I was nurturing my children, so I had no energy to nurture these plants. And sometimes you have to let those things go. And you were okay with letting those things go to take care of what you needed to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. It also sounds like you realize that you have one foot in this new world and one foot in the old world, and you're going to have to transition.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you see that that's something you're going to have to do now soon, or do you see that that's just coming down the road and you're okay with it just kind of being in the distance for a minute? Do you feel in the rush to do it or no?
I'm okay. I don't necessarily tired to do it. And then I feel this sense of frustration, or like, because like, oh my gosh, I have this really cool idea. I have this inspiration, but I don't feel ready to act on it yet. I'm not ready to let go of the things on one side of my life that I need to let go of to make this happen over here. And so I just write them down, and I just kind of have them in holding, and hope that when I am ready, that inspiration is still there.
So let's talk about that a little bit. We're going to use a little bit more of the plant analogies. Sometimes when you have an idea and you're starting something, that's the seed. And then there's the sprout, right? And then there's that period where it's just growing, 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 but nothing's really harvesting, or it's not full bloom. Where do you feel like you are when it comes to where you are in your business right now? You're not quite the seed, but where do you feel like you're at right now?
I still think I'm maybe not the sprout, but you know, that stage when it like has its first like real leaves. It's not a sprout anymore, but it's just got one set of real leaves. So that's where I am.
That's where you are. That's where you are.
Yeah.
So what do you feel like you'll need in order to nurture more of your growth?
I feel like I need an aspect of I think that's where the event rental comes in, because that is it's kind of like fertilizer, right? Like it's a higher yield. It's an aspect of the business that I can do in spurts, but doesn't require like an extra day in the week every week. It's like something I can do within what I'm already doing to enrich what I'm already doing. It doesn't require more business hours open. It doesn't require anything outside of what I'm already doing. It's something that can come from within what I'm doing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it actually sounds. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and it will add some extra resources to the business that I can, like, I feel like before I can let go of what I have with my job, there needs to be more volume of business, more income, more consistency than what there is now before I can let go of anything that I'm doing currently.
Yeah, because it sounds like to me, you're aware of the growth that you need to be. You have the vision of where you want to go, but you're not necessarily in the rush to jump there. It sounds like you can have the vision and hold it and still make steps towards it.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think that's really great to talk about when it comes to the journey of creating a business or anything, is we have the vision. And sometimes we get frustrated because we see that vision and we want it now. We want the end result now. But there's not enough conversation about the journey that goes from here where we are to where we want to be, and all that stuff that has to happen in between to get you there. There's not enough conversation about that. That sometimes it's a slow process, and sometimes it's a messy process, and sometimes you don't know where you're going and how to get there, but you're just trying everything. What advice would you give to somebody who's feeling that way, who they too are not the sprout anymore necessarily, or maybe they are the sprout and they're wanting to get those leaves? What advice would you give them?
I don't know if this is the first thought that came to my mind, so I'm just going to say it. And I don't know
Go for
if
it.
it's thought out, but there was this, I don't know if it was a podcast or a book, but it was about like getting from where you are to where you want to be, and not, and just basically plugging it into your GPS, right? And as long as you're moving forward, you might have to take detours and you might turn left when you should have gone right, but you're eventually going to get there because the GPS is going to reroute you, right? So as long as you're
Mhm.
moving forward or moving, even if it feels like you're moving backwards, as long as you're not just sitting in park, you're eventually going to get there.
I love that. Yeah. Not letting go of that vision and just
Mhm.
taking steps towards it. And even if you don't think it's leading you to where you want to go, it's still going to be leading you because that vision is yours.
Yes, and there's lessons to be learned along the way, and not worry about like getting there as fast as you possibly can or even the most direct route, but just keep moving.
Yeah. So I feel like businesses are an expression of who we really are. And it's just all about our personal growth through this expression. And even when we get to the quote unquote destination where we think we're trying to head to, there's going to be more growth after that. There's going to be more expansion. So there's no real there to get to. It's just more and more.
Absolutely. Because I know for myself, maybe there's people out there that like once they reach their goal, they're content to just sit there and like nest in, but that's never been my experience with any of life's journeys. Like once once I reach a goal that I had, then it's like, okay, now what's next? Where are we going now? And so there's constant um like reevaluation of where I'm going.
Hmm. Let me ask you this. Since you hated gardening growing up and you didn't see yourself being in a business with plants, what made you think, okay, yeah, I'm going to sell plants? There's other people out there. Did you, especially if you didn't have really anybody coming to you necessarily at the beginning, how did you know, yep, this is what I want to do and I'm going to invest my time and my money and um, my life into creating this and cultivating this?
I don't know. I like, and where I am now wasn't the original idea either. Like when the original idea happened, it was like, okay, phase one is going to be, I'm going to sell house plants, and I can do that out of my home. I can do that out of my garage. I can do that. Like we put a little shed out in the yard with lights and a heater. And that's, my original plan was to just like online or Facebook, local sales, that sort of thing. But that's not that wasn't like the whole business idea. Like eventually I would love to have a greenhouse or, something even more than what I have. So I knew that I couldn't just jump there. So it had to be one step at a time. And I knew that like, if I want to do this before I die, I'm going to have to start now because it seems like such a huge goal. That's so many steps on the journey. So I've just got to like start with this. So it's like of the bigger picture.
Yeah, if you don't plant that seed, nothing can grow. You got to get started at some point, right?
I have a whole field to plant. So like
there we go.
now.
Right. And that's for all of us. Our dreams, these visions, we start off with a vision, we start off with an idea, but we have no idea how big it's going to be. And it could be so huge. And I think sometimes that's why we're so afraid, is we can sense it's going to be a big thing. A lot can come through it and a lot is going to be asked of us. And I think that's a lot also where some of the fear comes from. But you do have to just get started. If not, it's just an idea.
Yeah.
Right.
Analogy of a staircase. Like you're standing in front of a staircase and all you can see is like the first couple steps, and you don't know what all is involved in the staircase and what's at the top of it, but you know that like all you have to do is like find that next step and then the next step, and maybe that's all that reveals itself to you is one step at a time, but that's all you have to do. You don't have to jump to the top of the staircase.
Yeah.
So
I think what it is, I don't remember who said it, but I think they say faith is taking the next step, even though you can't see it or something like that. I always think to I've always said, I equated it to driving on the highway with headlights. You can only see so far. Once you
Yeah.
come around the curve, it's going to reveal more of itself, but only so long as you keep moving.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, because you're never going to reveal more by being stagnant and staring there. It's just going to be the same light into an abyss that's going to scare you. But if you keep moving, it's not so scary. More reveals itself. So since this is a Woman in Business series, my last question to you is, how do you feel like being a woman has helped you in business?
I've not really thought about that before. I definitely think there's a community of women, especially who I have encountered in Madison, that are very supportive of other women in business. So I don't know if that same thing exists with men. I don't know, because I'm not a man, but I do know that there are there's a community of women who support women in Madison. So that has been really helpful and inspiring. I'm trying to think if like something intrinsic about being a female helps with business. And I don't know. I would want to explore that more before I speak on it.
Okay, fair enough. So thank you, Emily, so much for doing this interview. It's been really illuminating, and it's been refreshing, and it's been fun. And I know people are going to get so much insight about it from this. Tell everybody where they could find you if they wanted to look you up online.
So I'm on Facebook. The Jade Feather is our Facebook page. We're also on the web, www.thejadefeather.com. I also have Instagram, although that's probably where I put the least of my posts and my time and that sort of thing into. We're located in the Trolley Barn in Madison, 719 West Main Street. And also I have plants at Crafted Coffee, which is at the corner of Broadway and Main in Madison.
Awesome. Thank you again so much for doing this.
You're welcome. Thank you for inviting me to do this. It was fun.
Thanks so much for listening. If you'd like, share this episode with a friend. That way we can get it into the ears of people who need it the most. You can also visit my website at theartofbecoming.me. While there, you can go ahead and download my guide, Own That Shit, 3 ways to own who you are, own what you do, and own it out into the world. Thank you again so much for listening, and I'll speak to you soon.